Hello and welcome to another video. Today I'm going to be knitting up a bunch of swatches for my upcoming projects and share why I think you shouldn't start knitting. While there are so many things about knitting that I absolutely love, there are definitely parts of it that have totally reshaped the way I think about things. So I thought I'd take you through some of my not so hot takes. These are all in good fun and just my opinions and some of my thoughts, so please don't take them too seriously. Come and join me while I make some swatches. So the first swatch I am making is for the Lulu Slipover by Petite Knit. I am doing my swatch on 4mm needles and I'm using Sanna's Garn's Peer Gynt in the colour Navy Tweed, which is one of the recommended yarns. So one of the things that I have noticed since starting knitting is making your own clothes ruins shop bought clothes. Since I started making my own clothes, there are certain things that I struggle with shop bought pieces. Firstly is I just buy a lot less. There are so many items that I would rather make myself, and I'd rather spend the money on the yarn and feed my hobby than buy something ready-made. This especially comes to things that would be better with a bit of tailoring, so I can crop things to the length that I like, I can shorten sleeves, I can reduce and increase armhole depth, I can modify necklines. Last year I especially found it with my summer garments. I knitted a bunch of tank tops that I made to my exact cropped length, and I really liked that I could make them to my specific needs rather than buy something that was never really going to fit me the way I wanted it to. This also works with styles as well. So if something is not in fashion but it's your preferred fit, it doesn't matter when you're knitting it yourself. You can make things with the amount of ease and to the length that you want and that fits you the best. So the other part of buying clothes that has become difficult is looking at fibre content. I have been lucky to knit in so many different fibre blends now. I feel like I've only just scratched the surface when it comes to natural fibres, and more of the clothes that's made in fast fashion or just the stuff that's accessible to me in charity shops is a high percentage of polyester or acrylic. Now, I'm definitely not an acrylic hater. I have an entire blanket that I'm making out of acrylic. But when it comes to knitting, it really has opened my eyes up to different fibre contents and what works best, especially when it comes to the changing seasons. It's become much harder to buy a jumper in a shop that's made of acrylic when I could make one myself out of alpaca or merino or anything I liked. The third thing that knitting has made difficult about buying my own clothes is the colour selection. There are so many colours if you're buying your own yarn. You can make any garment out of any colour of the rainbow and you're not restricted to what's in that season or what's trending. So if I want the perfect red t-shirt to match something, then I'm probably going to be able to find the yarn, whereas trying to find something that niche in a shop, very difficult. I particularly love making specific pieces out of hand-dyed yarns. Yes, I know this gets expensive, but for certain key pieces in my wardrobe, I just love adding that pop of colour, and it's not something that you can necessarily get from commercially made clothes. So I do think taking up knitting has made a huge impact on how I buy clothes, and it has made it difficult in a lot of ways. I'm going to continue on with my test square, and I will come back when I'm ready for my next one. I have brought you down here because I'm actually going to cheat on my next swatch. I would like to make the Nurture Bralette by Celine Phaeton, and it is made on the same needle size that I made this plot twist tank out of, and I want to use up the leftover yarn. So effectively I have a giant gauge swatch already, so I'm just going to measure and see if I'm on track. And while I do that, I'm going to give you my next reason why you shouldn't start knitting, which is that hyperfixation is a real problem. So this might just be the way my brain is wired, but when I get into something, I really get into it. And especially when I start a project that I find really interesting, I find it really hard to put down. In some ways, this is a really great thing because I am quite a prolific knitter and I don't have a lot of lingering whips. When I start something, I do tend to finish it. On the flip side, I am always thinking about knitting. I am fantasizing about my next project. I'm looking up yarn. I am reading ahead in the pattern when I can't physically be knitting. I'm always thinking about it. And when I am knitting, I do have to build in regular breaks into the project because I find it really hard to switch off. I just want to keep going, which isn't great when I've got a ton of other things I need to be doing. Again, this may be not how your brain works, in which case this is not a problem that you will have. But if you have ever experienced hyperfixation or a special interest, then you may end up down this same rabbit hole. 25 by 36. Which ain't awful. It's actually a few days later and I have my next swatch to show you. I had a bit of a rough day yesterday. Yesterday was all a bit much, so I didn't film while I made this. I just needed a bit of time to decompress. Our washing machine decided to explode yesterday morning while it was in the middle of a load. And then we've had some new neighbours move in. Currently there is a swarm of bees making a home underneath our table in the garden, which is a little terrifying. Anyway, we will get back onto swatching. Another reason why you shouldn't start knitting is you will become the friend who is always knitting. This is slightly related to the last point on hyperfixation, but there are now very few times where I am not knitting. Warm up at the gym, I'm knitting. Commute to work, I'm knitting. Cozy Sunday afternoon, I'm knitting. Break from chores or a lunch break, I'm knitting. I have brought knitting to parties and pubs on the rare occasion where I do leave my flat. And if I'm working from home or on meetings or doing training, I am probably knitting. I've even catered projects for the environment that I'm knitting in. For instance, I knit socks on the tube because they're portable, they're fairly quick, and I can pick them up and down easily. Stockinette projects are great for meetings or when you have slightly lower light conditions or any time where you still need your brain to be fairly switched on. And then I save complicated work for the weekend when I've got lots of brain space and I want to feel a bit more stimulated. There is always knitting in my bag, and if I can knit, I will knit. I actually completed my little swatch yesterday while I was in the middle with dealing with the washing machine and the bees and also trying to work from home. I made the swatch for the Wavy Sweater by Bailey Gayer. It is a crochet swatch and I'm using my mystery green cone yarn with the two colours of Holsgarn Coast that I picked up on my trip to Amsterdam. And I ended up using a 5mm needle, which I think will make quite a nice airy jumper. Moving on to my next swatch, which is for the Coastline Mini Dress by Olga Knitwear Design. I'm trying this out on Knitting for Olive's Pure Silk and I'm holding it double because it looked a little thin. This pattern does call for a sport weight, so I'm going to see how holding this double works. And I'm using the recommended 3mm needles for now, but again, we'll see how it goes. So the next reason I have for not starting knitting is people are going to ask you what you're making. Knitting has a bit of a reputation for being an antisocial hobby. You sit in the living room all cozy with a pet on your lap and working on a project. And to a certain extent that's pretty accurate, for me at least. However, if you're going to knit in public, people are going to ask you what you're making. I live in London, which is notorious for people minding their own business and not interacting with each other at all. And even here, I have had people come up to me on tubes or in waiting rooms or in cafes because they're curious about what I'm making. So I would say, do not take on this hobby or do not knit in public if you want to be ignored. If people in London will come up to you and ask you questions, then I'm pretty sure that that will be the same anywhere in the world. Part of me does love it when people ask me questions. I love it when kids are staring at me on the tube trying to figure out what I'm doing. I like people asking how long I've been working on something and then are shocked when I say quite a long time. But there are definitely days, usually after a hard day at work, where I want to knit to unwind and I really just don't want to be perceived. And that's when getting those kind of questions can be a bit difficult. If you never plan to knit outside of your own home, then you can totally ignore this point. It probably won't be relevant to you. And with that, I'm gonna continue on with my swatch. And finally, on my last swatch for this little swatch session, this one is for camisole number 9 by My Favourite Things Knitwear. I'm using the same yarn as my last swatch, which is the Knitting for Olive Pure Silk, but I'm holding it single this time. So this swatch will also act as the Coastline mini dress swatch for holding it single. It's big enough that it can do both, which is nice. I don't have to do 2 of the same swatch. So my last reason why you shouldn't start knitting is that every holiday becomes an opportunity to buy yarn. This is something I've only noticed recently. A couple of years ago, I didn't even bring knitting on a plane with me. I would just go on holiday, leave my crafting at home for me to come back to. And I didn't look at yarn shops while I was away. Sometime last summer though, this changed and I started flagging any yarn shops that happened to be close when I was planning an itinerary for a holiday. This has some pros and cons. Yarn makes great souvenirs, for me anyway. I love using the yarn I found to make little accessories or garments, and it becomes a reminder of the time that you spent at that place. I'd much rather spend my money supporting the hobby that I love rather than trinkets that I will probably lose or not use. But for downsides, I'm usually quite restricted by luggage, so I tend to buy single skeins, usually of sock yarn, because I know I like making socks, so it's an easy thing for me to justify. But for someone who likes a smaller stash, it has occasionally gotten a little overwhelming. So buying yarn abroad can explode my yarn stash a little bit and leave me with lots of single skeins that I will have to work through at a fairly rapid pace if I want to keep on top of my stash. I haven't got too many more rows to go of this swatch, so I'm going to finish this one up and then I will soak them all. Thank you so much for watching while I nattered through some unasked for opinions. I hope you are excited to see some of the projects that I swatched for today. I know I'm excited to make them. I can't wait to show updates on how they're all going. But for now, that's everything, and I'll see you in the next one, hopefully. Bye!